Now that the winter drop is available to test on both Bedrock and Java, I decided to load up the same seed on both editions and show you what it looks like on Java and then what it looks like on Bedrock. There is a huge difference between the two, despite claims of parity, with the Bedrock version having far fewer trees, far fewer creaking hearts, and even when you strip the pale wood, you get a vastly different texture. Although some of these things will be fixed in the future, the clear trend is that parity is promised for Bedrock a lot of the time, but what is actually delivered is parity-ish with lots of exclusives, but only when they're bad for Bedrock. Why is this the case? Let's use the winter drop to find out, because hello, I'm ABXToyCat, and consider subscribing to the channel if you want to learn more about what's actually going on, because there are two equivalent updates for Bedrock and Java now. Despite coming out a full week later on Bedrock, it manages to have features which are undercooked relative to their Java counterparts, and even uses textures that are older than last week's Java snapshot. How does that possibly happen in a version of the game which theoretically should have more attention, more support, and more development? And indeed, how is it that the one major exclusive feature is one which isn't very well regarded because they added keep inventory to peaceful and easy? This is one which is fairly controversial. To some people they say, yeah, I guess that makes some sense, those difficulties need it, but other people say that this is one of the craziest changes they've made, just kind of casually on the side. For a game company that goes through great deals to not make something controversial, with huge numbers of features locked up behind experimental, it seems weird that they would make such a drastic change all of a sudden, and let's talk about why they made it, because Minecraft is changing difficulty. You might not have known this, but they changed their difficulty screen last year for new players, and in just over a week they'll be changing it again when they introduce hardcore mode, although when they showed this off at Minecraft Live, they actually had to switch out of hardcore.
Because that one life to live changes the entire way that you play.
Did they really need to turn off hardcore just to do the water bucket clutch? It looks like every time you see someone at Mojang play the Bedrock version of the game, like they're playing it for the very first time, and I don't think that that's actually that inaccurate, something that is added to when we see this right here. But yeah, basically, Mojang has a bit of an issue with the Bedrock version of the game, something which is being made worse by basically performing weird experiments on it. As you'll know, they changed the name of Bedrock to Minecraft Play With Friends, and now they're trying to change difficulty on Bedrock to make peaceful and easy easier, which in my opinion is good. In fact, I think there's quite a few good things about this change, because Minecraft has a difficulty slider which doesn't really affect that much. Peaceful is very, very easy, and then easy, normal, and hard are really just damage reduction and hunger reduction. So what if they make peaceful and easy actually differentiated by having an inventory which stores upon death? This change makes sense when you compare Minecraft Death to many other games in the genre, because inventory management is hard and reorganizing it is a real pain, given that you don't just lose your 36 slots of inventory when you die, much more than most games, but also your 4 armor slots which don't automatically re-equip, and also you lose most of your levels too. This change makes Minecraft a little closer to other games and effectively makes easy a different level of difficulty to the other ones, and it fixes a huge injustice that many people see of requiring achievements be turned off for keep inventory. Keep inventory is less of a cheat than peaceful mode, and so if you're going to allow people to earn achievements on peaceful, you should also allow them to earn achievements if they have keep inventory while playing on easy difficulty. This is a very easy argument to make, and combined with the business direction of Minecraft trying to be a more multiplayer game, having a more friendly difficulty option seems like a very good one. Because right now, if you are someone who doesn't really understand much and is just jumping into it, you kind of get ravaged by the game from the get-go. This is something which makes Minecraft unique, but also something I'm sure which many business type people look at and say, ooh, that could be changed. And so given that they're looking to change difficulty anyway, let's talk about why they shouldn't change it in this way, because they're trying to change easy difficulty from being Minecraft, but it's a bit easier in some ways, into Minecraft, but there are no consequences difficulty. Right now, peaceful mode is at least somewhat balanced by the fact that you can't find everything in there. I think that this is the bigger issue they could address if they're looking to make Minecraft much easier to play and have all of the content in, but easy would become the go-to for anyone who wants to keep inventory, but also become a big problem for anyone who likes to play it, because now they're going to have a different way of playing, which will encourage them to make what would otherwise be poor decisions. If there are no more consequences to dying in survival, then death will actually be the best way out of many situations. Have you gotten lost far from home? Rather than having to learn about navigation and get your way back by working out all of the tools, instead you just die when you want to. Do you find yourself in a scary situation where you might activate the warden? Well, rather than sneaking around and trying to delicately make sure you don't activate the shriekers, well, you activate as many shriekers as you want and when you put down a bed, and you can just run around with death being basically no issue. This is a big problem, and although it's a problem that's off your own creation, so you could easily just avoid it, why would you? This is the thing about video games. You can choose to play them any way you want, and lots of people do, but nobody chooses to play Minecraft in a way where they pretend the game is artificially harder than it really is. A good example of this would be, even if people don't like the idea of mending, you have to concede that if it's in the game, you'd be silly not to use it. And the same is true for many other things like coordinates. When they added coordinates to Bedrock, they just threw it on screen at all times. I would have personally preferred that it stayed on maps. I think that's a fair solution because the map is meant to be your guide around. However, if the option was have it on screen so I could actually see it or not have it at all, I made my game easier for myself, and although you might argue that has some benefits, if it's something that Mojang doesn't want you to do, they've encouraged you to do it just by giving you that binary choice. And the same is true for keep inventory. If I want to play easy, I now will have to have that turned on. That doesn't necessarily seem good, and so that is why I think that rather than just going over the good and the bad, I think the alternatives here are what's important, because this is what they need to start doing with everything when it comes to the winter drop, and indeed any other drop where they start doing these questionable Bedrock decisions, because I think that you could easily just look at this and say, okay, keep inventory is for peaceful only. Boom, you've made peaceful difficulty better. You've made easy, a difficulty which still can retain its speedrunning benefits. Or you could say, okay, keep inventory actually scales based on difficulty. On peaceful, you keep everything. On easy, you keep just your hotbar. And on normal, you will keep just 2 items or 3 items, or even just 1 item, your furthest left slot, would encourage you to organize your hotbar in such a way that your best and most valuable items that you'd need to use to recover the rest would stay with you. This would be really cool and matches what RuneScape does actually, where you keep your 3 most valuable items, and I found myself in that game thinking about like, okay, what items am I going to lose, what am I going to keep, and you're emotionally slightly better off with death just with that, and the planning around it creates new fun gameplay rather than how it is right now, where effectively they just turn on a cheat by default. And I know that calling it cheating seems a bit powerful given that there's no broken-hearted spouses, but Minecraft does refer to it as cheating when you enable certain things that disable achievements, but I think that within that category, to put on the keep inventory is insane when there are so many other less harmful or powerful but more desirable options like do insomnia. I think that turning off insomnia would help players a lot more, and so let's have do insomnia be optional when you're on easy difficulty as an option here. I think that if they want to make some radical changes to difficulty, they need to actually work out what it is that can make new players appreciate easy or peaceful better, and then they also need to work out what it is that actually defines a cheat, because I think the only reason there's any debate about this is because something which was considered a cheat and therefore off limits is just being added for only for 2 difficulties. Perhaps a bit more customization could be good when it comes to things like this, so that you can play easy with keep inventory off, or that you can play normal with keep inventory on. This is something worth considering, but for now I want to say that my conclusion for the difficulty is that changing difficulty is good, but this is a terrible implementation, and I see why it happened since it's one of the easiest ways to change, but I think if they want an even easier way, just implement Java speed regeneration to Bedrock. If you're worried about unbalancing the game with that, you can make it just easy and normal that gets this, because Bedrock suffers from inventory management and from being hard, but I'm just not convinced that both of those problems need to be solved at the exact same time. Sadly, this is one of the very few exclusives we've had on the Bedrock version of the game, and it basically exists by enabling a cheat all of the time on one difficulty, and that's about as much exclusive development as we get on the Bedrock version. Otherwise, it seems as though they developed the game for Java first, and then try to port it over to Bedrock, which results in all sorts of problems. Again, if we come back to these creaking canapes, look how beautifully they designed this biome to show off at Minecraft Live and indeed to function inside of the game, and it's clear that they just ported that same generation over to Bedrock, but on Bedrock there are far fewer trees, and so it looks like it's a much worse version of the same thing, because if you just take a Java version of something and bring it over to Bedrock, but with much less consideration, you're going to get a worse version of that feature. This is why I would like Mojang to at least seriously consider reorganizing how they do parity. Looking at any of the features that we've mentioned so far today with regards to the creaking hearts, or indeed the canapes as a whole, the pale garden I should say, or the pale wood in this garden, you can see that they're all just things ported over from Java, and that made them worse. At least with the keep inventory, you could argue they're trying something different. We might start a conversation. It might be that this is so wildly popular, it's not, but it could have been so wildly popular that they realize what they can do there, and they can kind of do what they've been doing with experiments on Java, but do that between Java and Bedrock. Release one version of a trial update on Bedrock in their previews and betas, release one update in the snapshots, and see which version the community community like more. You have 2 development teams for the game after all. Wouldn't it make sense if they developed 2 separate versions of something, and then only when you worked out which was more popular, then you implemented it across both? Right now, the development path is they only add things to Java if they're pretty damn certain they can be added to Bedrock, and then they tell the Bedrock team clearly, go add this to the game, and most of the time, it eventually gets into the game in a fully functioning form, but sometimes you get these weird offshoots of a biome that would be so unpopular if it was shown off that it never would have made Minecraft live. I mean, if we take just a few seconds to explore this on Bedrock, you can see that the giant gap in the tree line just leads to a biome that doesn't feel spooky. It just feels like a new place to get some wood, which it does very well, to be fair. And, you know, I feel like with things like the old texture, it's like, oh yeah, they just accidentally made a mistake, or they made this version a few weeks ago before the Java snapshot was even available. Perhaps you could make that argument, but I think that if they're going to play around with an entirely different version and they're going to make a new generation, rather than making it, okay, this is kind of like Java, but worse, what if they actually took advantage and they played around with new ideas? What if they said, oh yeah, we make bigger trees on this version to see how those ones come across, where there's a more clear line to find the Creaking Heart, but also a much more dangerous line where you're probably going to be attacked from behind. It's very hard to break this while dealing with a Creaking, for example. I feel like they could have actually played around with the ideas and made it so that Bedrock and Java both function as different development versions of the game that later come together once there is a clear favorite from the community. The only downside I can see with this is that, yeah, you might get near close to 50-50 splits, or examples where the Bedrock version of the game is loved by Bedrock and Java by Java. I do see that there are some problems with this, but right now we get a development pattern which has all of the downsides of developing for 2 separate versions with very few of the upsides. We get the Bedrock version of the game which is often missing fairly big, fairly major features, and we get that despite huge amounts of work from the Java team to make sure that their features can work on Bedrock. And so what if there was just a better way for Bedrock to be? This is something that Minecraft does need to seriously consider if they're having, if they want more people to play Minecraft with friends, as they explicitly stated was their goal in their future Minecraft update, then one of the ways is to make more people want to play the Bedrock version, the Play with Friends edition, and that means making this version one which more people are willing to give a shot, and one which people go, oh yeah, that's not just the weird version of the game that even Mojang themselves aren't willing to play, but instead this is the version of the game with some cool features sometimes, some cool experiments in it, and that is how I would do things personally. But what about you? What do you think? Do you think that Minecraft should take advantage of Java and Bedrock being 2 separate game engines and 2 separate versions to do cool quirky things like they used to before the update Aquatic? Or do you think that they should say, nah, actually, they should just try and aim for the exact same features at the exact same time, so that regardless of whether you're playing Java or Bedrock, you can follow the same updates and know that roughly the same stuff is in there? That is something for you to debate, I guess. For now, I just want to say that I think this biome is really interesting looking, at least as an idea. I think it's got all the right vibes in here, and I'm glad that even though it took a week to come to Bedrock, we have most of the features. But I also think about the update more broadly. As it stands right now, I have a fairly bad first impression because I chose to play on Bedrock, and I wonder if that is something which is also, maybe worth looking into. Also, by the way, we're calling it the Winter Drop only because it says that on the Java edition of the game. On Bedrock, it's just called 1.20, 1.50. There's a lot of questions about update names and stuff, though I have to leave aside for now and say, Mojang, please consider doing good parity and not just bad parity. That's my summary from this video. Bad parity makes everyone bummed out, and good parity hopefully provides the same basis as the combat experiments did years ago, as the minecart experiments did literally months ago, and as indeed many of the other great experiments that Mojang have played around with, because I think that those are the things that can make Minecraft great and beloved, and this is just something that makes people go, oh, I guess I'll wait for the next preview to really play around with that then. Anyway, speaking of next preview, I hope that they fix this soon, because we are now just a couple of weeks, just under a couple of weeks away from hardcore, and just under a couple of months away from being able to play around with this in the real game. I'm looking forward to seeing what changes Minecraft makes in that time, but for now, I'll see you tomorrow for Q&A Saturday. Goodbye.